The following is a videotaped deposition of Twana Powell, taking the matter of the estate of JoAnn Matouk Romain via the city of Grosse Pointe Farms. This case is to be held in the United States District Court, Eastern District of Michigan. The case number is 14 CD 12289 LVT. We are located at 26700 Basha Road, Southfield, Michigan. Today's date is May 20th, 2016. The time is approximately 10:07 a.m. And I'll counsel introduce yourselves, please.
Good morning. May it please this honorable court, Solomon Radner appearing on behalf of the plaintiff. I'm here together with my assistant, Katie Tuntis, and my client, Michelle Romain, is on the telephone.
Good morning. May it please the court. My name is Kevin Thomas. I am here on behalf of the city of Grosse Pointe Farms, as well as Chief of Police Daniel Jensen, Sergeant Holly Kruzmanik, Lieutenant Jack Patterson, Lieutenant Andrew Rogers, Officer Richard Rosati, Officer Michael McCarthy, Officer Keith Colombo, Officer Antonio Trupiano, Officer Jeffrey McQueen, Officer Wesley Kipke, Officer John Walco, Officer Frank Zielinski, and Officer Ricky Good.
And I'm Gus Morris. I represent the city of Grosse Pointe Woods and 5 named officers: Andrew Pazahowski, John Kosanke, John Ross, Keith Wazak, and Anthony Shalout.
Good morning. May it please the court, Pete Peacock appearing on behalf of Timothy Matouk.
And Mark Pizer appearing on behalf of Timothy Matouk.
Ma'am, I'll ask you to raise your right hand, please. You swear the testimony you're about to give should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
The witness is sworn.
Good morning, Lieutenant. Can you please state and spell your name for the record?
It's Twana Powell, Twana Powell.
Okay, I just want to introduce myself first. My name is Solomon Radner. I represent the estate of JoAnn Matouk Romain, and Michelle Romain is the personal representative of the estate of JoAnn Matouk Romain, who is deceased. Today is the date and time scheduled for deposition, which you were subpoenaed for. And I appreciate you being here. I note that you have an attorney with you as well. I'm going to be asking you some questions. All the questions need verbal answers. Obviously, everything is being recorded today, and the court reporter is going to have to type this out at some point in time in the probably not too far off future, and the court reporter is not going to be able to write things that are head shakes, waving the hands, ahas, things of that nature. Fair enough?
Yeah.
So if there's a question that you don't understand or that you feel you can't answer, please just let me know, and I'll try to rephrase it.
I will.
Okay. At any point in time, you might hear any of the attorneys here make an objection. Somebody will ask a question. Somebody might say objection. If that's the case, just hold tight for a minute. I know you might have something that you want to say. Just wait until we make our records. At that point in time, your attorney will probably tell you to answer the question, at which time it will then be appropriate to answer. Fair enough?
Fair.
Okay. First, I want to ask you a little bit about yourself. This might not be an appropriate question, but how old are you?
47.
And let's go back to high school. What year is it that you graduated high school, assuming you did?
1986.
And what did you do after that, education-wise?
I attended Wayne County Community College and obtained my associate's degree.
Associates in what?
General Studies.
And what year did you get your associate's degree?
88 or 89, I believe.
And then what did you do after that, educationally?
I didn't pursue any further education after that. I enlisted in the Michigan Department of State Police in 1993, and after being in the department for some time, I attended the University of Phoenix and obtained my bachelor's degree in business administration.
And what year did you obtain that degree, please?
2005.
So you were working at MSP the entire time through obtaining your degree at Phoenix, or did you stop to obtain your degree?
I obtained my degree while working.
Working full-time?
Yes.
Have you been working full-time for the Michigan State Police since 1993?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to go from the very beginning. In 1993, what were you hired to do? What was your title, and what were your job duties?
In 1993, when I enlisted in the department, I was a recruit. I went to the Michigan State Police Academy, and I graduated that academy after 5.5 months, and I became a probationary trooper. I was then assigned to the Jackson post.
What year is this?
That was 1993.
Still 93, okay. All right, so you were assigned to the Jackson post, and that's just a short time after you completed this 5.5-month police academy training.
It was immediately after.
Okay, how long were you at that? What was your job title at that post, and what were your duties there?
I was a probationary trooper, where I was with a FTO, field training officer. Once I completed that process, which was a year-long process, I continued being assigned as a trooper, being that Michigan State Police is a full-service police department. In that area, I investigated criminal complaints, patrolled traffic, did a number of things, investigated incidents inside of the state prison.
Okay, so you were, just so that I understand this, you were a probationary trooper for about a year, and then you
Yes.
became a trooper?
Yes,
And then how long were you a trooper for at the Jackson post?
a short time, maybe not even a year.
Not even a year. And while you were, the job duties that you were just describing, investigating criminal activity, things that were happening in the Jackson prison, I presume, that's the prison you're talking about, right?
It is multiple prisons in Jackson, but yes.
Oh, okay.
Any state facility.
Okay. And then a short time after that, what happened? You were promoted, you were moved, what happened?
I took a voluntary transfer back to the metropolitan Detroit area. I was assigned to the Detroit post.
Okay, and that was one in 94 sometime?
Yes,
Okay, so in 94 you go to the Detroit post, you're still a trooper?
yes,
And same job duties there,
pretty much, yes.
minus the prison work?
Including the prison work. Ryan and Mound was in the city of Detroit, yes.
Thank you for correcting me, I forgot about that. And so you were a trooper in 94 working the Detroit post for how long?
I worked at the Detroit Post pretty much until the Detroit Post was no longer in existence.
And when was that?
That included my stint as a detective sergeant. Can I just give you my resume?
Please do.
'Cause,
I'd
you
love to see it. Do you have a copy with you?
No, I'm just saying, can I
Oh.
verbally tell you?
Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead. We don't have to do this
In
question by question.
1994,
Okay.
I went to the Detroit Post where I was a trooper on patrol. I investigated crimes as well.
Okay.
Probably 2 years after that, I was assigned to the training academy on temporary staff as an instructor in the areas of patrols. I did that stint for about 6 months. I left there, I returned to the Detroit Post as a trooper, and I was subsequently assigned to the Detroit Police Violent Crimes and Carjacking Task Force, where I was there for approximately 3 years. My duties and responsibilities there were to investigate criminal activities such as carjacking and violent crimes, like homicides, carjackings, assault with intent to murder, serial rapes, whatever the climate was at that time. In 2000, specifically on January 23rd, 2000, I was promoted to detective sergeant, and I was assigned to the Detroit Post as a detective sergeant. During that assignment, I had several assignments encompassed in my stint as a detective sergeant. I was a detective sergeant almost 16 years, till recently in October 11, 2015, I was promoted to first lieutenant.
October 11, 2016?
2015.
15,
Because
sorry.
we're not there yet.
I didn't have enough coffee yet this morning.
I was promoted to commander of professional standards, which is my current assignment. Let's talk about the 16-year stint as a detective sergeant.
Let me just get your title again. Commander of what now?
It's first lieutenant,
Yeah, right.
commander of professional standards section, which is commonly referred to as internal affairs.
Okay.
Encompassed in that 16-year stint, I was, as a detective sergeant, you're in the Michigan State Police, you're assigned to investigate all manner of crime. Encompassed in that, I investigated everything from public corruption to homicide to larceny, petty theft. But encompassed in that, I was assigned to multiple task force. I was first assigned to a Detroit Police Homicide Task Force. It was a specified task force where 2 young children, a 10-year-old and a 17-year-old, were killed in the city of Detroit at separate locations on separate dates. The effort was put forward to make sure it wasn't a serial killer. involved. After that was resolved and those cases were solved, I returned to my duties as a detective sergeant. I was then again assigned to police homicides in the city of Highland Park.
What does police homicides mean?
Investigate.
Investigate what specifically? Is a police homicide when the police shoot somebody?
No. When I say police, I mean the word too means investigate.
Okay, fine. So you were looking at the homicides.
I was investigating homicides.
Okay, fair enough.
In the city of Highland Park.
Okay.
That was for about 2 years.
And what year are we in right now, please?
That was about 2002.
Okay.
I did that.
And what came next?
After that, I returned to, after that, I was assigned for a year, and this is 2004 to 2005. I was paid out of class to serve as the first lieutenant, the detective first lieutenant, overseeing all the detectives in the 2nd district, because there was a vacancy in that spot.
And just to help me understand what the 2nd district means,
The
please.
2nd district is the metropolitan Detroit area.
Okay.
When I say 2nd district, the Michigan State Police is separated in districts, and our areas are separated into districts. The 2nd district does encompass the metropolitan Detroit area.
Okay.
After serving as acting, I was given a task force because some of the homicides I was given this task force to oversee. It was a serial homicide case. Some of the homicides that occurred in Highland Park, ballistics showed them to be attached to a couple of homicides in the city of Detroit. So being that any homicides that occurred by the same assailant with time and spaces in between is technically a serial case. That was learned to be a series of homicides. It was like 30 bodies attached to a drug war with 2 well-known drug dealers in the city of Detroit. After that task force was resolved, I wound up going to being assigned to the Southeastern Michigan SimCAC task force. Now we're in probably about 2008.
Okay.
SimCAC was to investigate any crimes committed against children. It was a federally funded task force. It was a federal task force, and I was assigned to work that task force. Knowing all the while, all these task forces I'm mentioning, I was still dedicated to responsibilities within MSP. So I was also investigating a lot of public corruption, a lot of crimes that were, I would say, active, or currently evolving, things of that nature. So after that, in 2011, I was assigned to the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Public Corruption Task Force. I did that task force for probably about 2 years. I left that task force, and I again went back to the Southeastern Michigan Crimes Against Children Task Force.
Let me ask you about that a little bit. You said public corruption.
Yes.
Okay. What year are we in now?
That was 2011, October 2011. I was assigned to the FBI Public Corruption Task Force.
And you were there for 2 years on this task force?
A little over 2 years, yes.
So that's from 2011 to 2013?
Yes,
So you were actually investigating public corruption?
yes.
What does that mean, please? I don't know what that means, so just please explain to me. What does investigating public corruption mean?
Allegations of misconduct by police officers or criminal conduct by police officers or any sworn or elected official.
Well, the most famous case that we know about, obviously, is Kwame Kilpatrick. Things like that?
Yes,
Okay, public officials?
yes.
Did you happen to have any involvement in Kwame Kilpatrick?
I had involvement in Kwame Kilpatrick prior to the feds getting there. I was assigned there at the time that they were doing theirs, but I was out sometime. I had a battle with breast cancer, so I was off work. I was out for some time.
When was that you were out?
January 2012, and I returned to work June of 2012.
Okay.
So, am I back?
Let me ask you this. Did you receive any special training to assist you in your public corruption investigations?
Yes.
What training did you receive and when, please?
I don't have dates, but I went to, they're not necessarily considered public corruption, but internal affairs courses, certification courses, investigating, misconduct by police officers, things of that nature.
Courses that were offered by the Michigan State Police or in college to the public?
They were actually offered to law enforcement. There's a group called a Public Agency Training Council. It's called PATC. They offer law enforcement various different training. And not just them, it's several different. I've had so much training, I would have to literally print out a resume for you. I don't know all of that offhand, specific, because I've had, just a vast amount of training in homicides, just a lot of training. In 23 years, I might take 3 to 4 training courses a year. So to sit here and tell you what that is, I couldn't.
Okay, so it's not just that the folks at the MSP realize that you're so good, so let's give you this promotion to investigate public corruption. They give you intensive training before they give you such a promotion or before they give you such a job. True?
Not necessarily.
Okay, please
A
explain.
lot of the training that you get, a lot of the expertise you wind up getting is on-the-job training, practical skills application. You can sit in a classroom all day and somebody can read you some dialogue or something. It's actually applying those skills. Since January 2000, when I got my promotion as detective sergeant, I hit the ground running, investigating allegations of public corruption. That could be the misappropriation of funds. That could be anything. And I developed an ability to, not only did I investigate them, but I displayed an ability to do them, the tenacity to do them. Not everybody are willing to investigate another officer or a public official.
Why is that?
I don't know. I don't have the trepidation, so some people do. I never did a survey to ask people why. I don't understand it, but a crime is a crime. It doesn't matter who committed it.
I'm going to ask you if you've ever heard of the term, the blue shield of silence. Have you ever heard of that?
It's more so that the thin blue line is what I'm familiar with. So
Okay, well, what is that?
the blue line is pretty much cops looking out for cops.
Okay, so cops don't want to throw each other under the bus generally.
Object to the form of the question. You can answer, witness. I can just object.
Okay, so this is not a job that, well, let me ask you this. Is this the type of job that you get offered and then you have to get training? Or is this the type of job that you can apply for?
I didn't apply for it.
You did or didn't?
I did not.
Okay, you did not apply
My
for it.
boss came to me and said, you will be going to the FBI Public Corruption Task Force. Based off of your experience and knowledge, you will be the person going to the Public Corruption Task Force.
Who was your boss?
My boss at that time was First Lieutenant Darrell Hill.
Darrell Hill, Hill.
Yes.
And can you just spell Darrell for us, please?
Darryl.
Okay.
Ms. Powell?
Yes, sir. Is that fine?
That's great.
Okay.
And what year was this that Darrell Hill told you you were going to be joining the FBI Public Corruption Task Force?
2011.
What month, if you recall?
I don't recall.
Okay. And at that, let me ask you this: what were your job duties in January of 2010?
I was a detective sergeant assigned to the 2nd District to investigate all manner of crime,
Including public corruption?
including public corruption.
What percentage of your, I would say caseload, but I don't know if that's how you would call it. So what percentage of your time around that time period in January of 2010 were you investigating public corruption, and what percentage of your time were you investigating other crimes?
90% was public corruption. I was on a very serious particular case during that time.
Are you allowed to say what case that was?
Yeah, I am. It was 2 lieutenants in the Michigan State Police who was assigned to a narcotics task force, several narcotics task force, who were just bad boys. I mean, it was everything from stealing money to stealing drugs to stealing property to bullying, using the forfeiture process to rape the public. You name it, it was happening.
When they would do these things, would they put in their police reports that they were doing these things?
In a sense, you know, we have a report writing system that, in that system, you input property. Some of that was misappropriating that property. So essentially, in some form of a report, not necessarily their police report, in some form of a report, they were lying or failing to document or something.
So, if I understand it correctly, it's more along the lines of you were kind of reading between the lines when you read a report. Is that a fair understanding?
Object to the form of the question.
I don't know what you mean when you say read between the lines. You need to explain
Well,
that.
for example, when you read a police report and you said something about misappropriation of property, would they actually write in their report that they misappropriated the property, or is that something you had to deduce from what you saw there?
That was something I would have to investigate
Okay.
by talking to witnesses, looking at the property screen, the property log, things of that nature.
Let me just jump ahead for a second, and then we'll get back to this. Was Daryl Hill was your boss in January of 2010?
Yes.
And did you ever send him any emails about the case that brings us here today or the underlying investigation that is the subject of this lawsuit?
Yes.
And what was the substance of that email, please? And then we're going to get back to we're going to go back to where we are, but I just want to get this out.
Well, we jumping way ahead.
I know we are. Do you mind?
I do, but you know, you're running the show, so.
You know what? I'll withdraw the question and we'll get back to this.
Okay.
Okay. I imagine, and I don't know this, but why don't you tell me how it is that a police corruption or a public corruption investigation begins?
With an allegation made by somebody.
Somebody makes an allegation, eventually it climbs the ladder and ends up on your desk? Something along those lines?
Yes.
Okay. And then once you see that, you start to investigate?
Yes.
And then would police officers ever reach out to you for assistance? And I'm not talking about public corruption, I'm talking about any crime.
Yes.
How often would that happen?
I can't call it. I mean, it just depends on the situation.
When a police officer or a police agency calls you, do they call you directly or do they call somebody else and then make a request and then whoever it is that gets that request sends it to you? How does it work, please?
It could happen in various ways, but it always reverts back to my boss because in the Michigan State Police, we're a paramilitary organization. It's all about chain of command. You don't jump a chain. That's disrespectful. So what you do is, if somebody called me direct, I would direct them to my boss. You know, in some cases with the public corruption thing, because it's such a, you know, it was a directed responsibility of mine. Someone could, you know, people are intimidated or scared or something. Someone could directly approach me with it, and then I would take it to my boss and say, this is what's the dynamics. I'm going to open an investigation, and they would approve it and move forward from there. So, you know, in some cases, some things are so sensitive in nature that you don't want to send them to 2 and 3 and 4 different people because that intimidates people. They're like, I want to be anonymous. I want to deal with one person. To send a person to 2 and 3 different people would make them feel somewhat like I'm exposed. So it just depends on the scenario.
And when somebody would ask you for help, what would be some of the reasons that they were asking you for help?
Well, often, most of the time when people asked for assistance by the state police.
And I'm talking about police officers requesting your assistance.
Police officers?
Yeah.
Just depends on the investigation. I mean, it could be anything. If it was, you talking about in terms of public corruption type investigation?
Right now, we're not talking public corruption. Let me just clarify my question. What I'm asking you is, obviously police officers, let's say in the city of John Doe City, are obviously trained and know how to do their jobs. Why would they reach out to you for your assistance in, let's say, a murder or a missing person? what would be some of the reasons that they would want to call you and ask for your assistance?
And I'm stuck because I'm a very matter-of-fact person. When you say reach out to me, I'm thinking as you're saying, that police officer said, hey, can you help me with this? Is that what you're saying?
Essentially,
They could
or an
say-
agency asking the MSP for help.
Oh, thank
What would
you.
be some of the reasons for that?
An agency asked the MSP for help would because they may feel it's a conflict of interest. Like if it's a police shooting incident, a lot of times the agency wants to step back and say, let's an independent person or agency conduct this investigation so it won't appear inappropriate. It could be a conflict of interest. It could be several things. It could be the Michigan's department is so small that they haven't had that type of crime occur in their area in such a long time. They say, hey, we don't know how to do this. Can you guide us? We would go in and not necessarily take over the case. We don't take over cases unless somebody hands us a case, you know. So they may say that we need your resources because the Michigan State Police got a large amount of resources. They might not even use us to investigate on a whole. They might just want our resources, such as the lab, such as an evidence technician, such as the ES team. So it's a large amount of reasons people could reach out to the state police for some assistance.
Okay. So when they would make a request, would it be for a specific thing, such as, I've got this blood draw, can you please tell me what's in this person's blood? Or would it be, I just arrested my friend, I'm pulling out of this investigation, I want you to take over the investigation. In other words, would you do bits and pieces of investigations, or would you do entire investigations? Or would you do a combination of the two?
It could be either or.
Okay. How many homicides have you investigated? Is it in the hundreds or thousands?
I would say it would be more towards, 100, not hundreds, but, more towards maybe
Close to
100, Like I said, I just told you about a case where it was 30 bodies connected to it, So I've done double murders, I've done single murders, I've done serial murders, you name it, it's been a lot. I don't even know if my guesstimation of 100, it's been 23 years. I haven't kept record, I just do my job.
You've done a lot of them.
Yes.
And you feel very confident that, you feel very confident that you're competent to investigate homicides.
Yes.
One of the things I think you said before is some of the cities might reach out to you if they don't have a particular expertise in a particular crime. For example, if there's a small little rich town somewhere that doesn't have very much involvement in human trafficking, they might reach out to the Michigan State Police?
Yes.
Okay. Or similar type of town that doesn't have much experience in abductions and murders. They
Yes.
might reach out to you as well.
Yes.
How many public corruption cases have you investigated?
Somewhere maybe in a ballpark of 50.
Over how many years? What
Over-
time period?
Like from 2000 to 2015, so I took my current assignment.
Okay, so that's what, like right around 3 to 4 a year?
Yeah. Okay.
Are there other people at Internal Affairs that investigate more than that? Or is that considered average, or is that considered a lot? Not so much. Where do you fall in the as far as numbers go?
Well, you're crossing duties and responsibilities now. My job at Internal Affairs, I haven't even addressed that, my duties and responsibilities there, because you jumped from.
You're right. Let me restate the question in a more clear way. In your time investigating public corruption, I imagine you weren't the only person investigating public corruption, true?
True.
In the time period that you investigated about 50 cases, and I know I'm not sticking that number on you, but that's the number that you said, so that's the ballpark number that we're going to
Okay.
use. In that time period that you investigated 50 cases, where did you fall in the rank of how many other people investigated more or less? In other words, did most people investigate 50? Did most investigate 100? So you were below average? Did
No.
most investigate 20? So you were above average? Do you understand what I'm trying to
I
get
was
at?
the top of the average because I was the person who was solely assigned to do that and oftentimes asked to do that. There were other allegations but it depended on the severity of the allegation or the complexity of the investigation and people's skills to do that. I mean, allegation of public corruption can just be something as simply as the misuse of lien or lying on a ticket. It's a large gamut or parameter for when you say public corruption. That term is used because somebody has the authority. They're a sworn elected official who is expected and trusted by the public to carry out their duties. And when they use that duty and that role to carry out an activity in conjunction with their duties, that's classified as public corruption. I've investigated officers for falsifying citations. So it's just a large circle.
Two things I want to ask you in follow-up to that is, you said elected officials, but obviously you mean police officers also.
Sworn elected officials is what I said. A police officer is sworn.
But they're not elected. I just want to be clear that
Some
you don't
can
only...
be. Some can be. You take county officers, like a county sheriff, he's elected. So it's sworn elected officials, somebody that's in that capacity, that's entrusted by the public to carry out their duties, which is a police officer, a mayor, a chief of police, a sheriff, anybody.
Okay, just because I don't want there to be any misunderstandings here. Are you saying that all police officers are elected?
They're sworn.
They're sworn. Okay, fine. So sworn, when you say sworn elected officials, you mean...
I said sworn or.
Sworn or elected officials. Okay, fair enough. Don't want to beat this dead horse, so let's move on. Hang on one second, please. You said something about misuse of LEIN. What is that? Explain to us first of all, what is LEIN? LEIN's an acronym, right?
It's a Law Enforcement Information Network.
LEIN.
Yes.
Law Enforcement Information Network.
Yes.
And what is LEIN?
It's a network that only is accessible to law enforcement officers, where they can use people's personal information to obtain further information about individuals. You run a person's criminal history, you can run their registration plate, their driver's license, you can run whether they have a CPL, a concealed pistols license. It's a law enforcement network that's specific to law enforcement and for law enforcement uses only.
So if I give you my driver's license and you run me through LEIN?
I wouldn't.
What?
I wouldn't.
I said if. What information would be available to you?
If you gave me your driver's license number, I could run your number and I could get your full name, your date of birth. I could get your address. Did
you say criminal record?
No.
So how would you look for somebody's criminal
I
record?
would have to run your criminal history. Just you giving me your driver's license and me running that, you have to communicate to the system what you want to know.
So explain it to me. When you put in somebody's name, are there checkboxes of things that you want LEIN to look up? Or is it, explain it to me, because I don't understand it. I've never done it. I'm not one.
You won't understand it without it not being present in the room for you to see what it entails. You can ask. I gave you a list of things that you could get from a person's using LEIN, which is criminal history, driver's license, personal identification. You know how you can get a PID card, a personal identification card, as opposed to a driver's license. You can get, if you run a person's CPL, their concealed pistol license record, their social security number is attached. If you run a person's criminal history, their social security is attached. So I need to communicate with the machine. If I wanted to run you per se and not just your driver's license number is going to give me your driving record. That's what your driver's license number is going to do. If I run you, I have to tell the computer what I'm running you for. I want his driving license information. I want to know if he has a warrant. I want his criminal history. I want his registration plate, all vehicles registered to him. I want to see his concealed pistols license. It's a gamut of things you can get from that use.
What is a misuse of LEIN? Explain that to me.
Misuse is somebody using it for purposes other than professional, information. That's like if you came to me, like when you first said, if I gave you my driver's license and I said I wouldn't. Only if it's in conjunction with my duties. I need to be running you for something that is directly associated with a job duty that I'm doing. I don't get to run you because I'm just curious as to what you're about. I don't get to do that.
Let me ask you this. Is every police officer given a unique either username, login credentials of some sort, or is it just accessing LEIN?
Well, I can speak to the Michigan State Police and how we do things. And there's been a significant change in the uses of LEIN from when I came on the department as to now.
When did those changes take effect?
I can't tell you.
Before or after 2010?
Maybe before 2010?
Okay.
I'm not sure. Like,
Okay.
it was not a trend that I was watching. I'll be honest with you. I'm not being difficult. I'm just saying it's a 23-year career, and I don't know the climate change and all that.
Let me ask you this. Is one police officer allowed to use another police officer's credentials to access the LEIN network?
Not in my agency. Now, see, other agencies, it might be a small police department where, I'm not an official for LEIN, to say that those parameters are set in place. Those parameters are set in place for the Michigan Department of State Police.
I'm going to hand you, they're interrogatories, but don't look at the interrogatories. I just want you to look at the caption. I've highlighted the names of the individual defendants in this case. I'd like you to take a look at them, please, and tell me if you know if any of these defendants have ever misused LEIN, as you just described it.
Not that I haven't come in contact with these.
Let me ask you this. Are you currently investigating any of the names that you see on the paper?
Currently?
Currently.
No.
Have you ever investigated any of the names on that paper?
No.
Okay. I want to talk to you about this case in particular. Were you at some point contacted by a member of law enforcement with regards to JoAnn Matouk Romain?
Yes.
And when was this contact made, please?
Well, in 2010, in conjunction with my request to go assess a case, I had contact with Pazahowski.
Okay. And how is it that Pazahowski, and I see you just pointed him out, he's sitting over there
Yes.
in the corner with the blue shirt. Okay.
Yes.
How is it that Pazahowski reached out to you? Or did he reach out to you? Did you reach out to him? How was contact made?
The initial contact was made through the chain of command, through those above me. I can't say if it's directly with my lieutenant. As a result of whatever contact and whomever he made contact with, I was summoned to go over to his police department and make contact with him regarding the Romain.
So you actually went to the Grosse Pointe Woods Police Department?
Yes.
And you spoke to Pazahowski?
Yes.
And how many occasions did you physically go to the police station and speak to him?
Just once.
Okay, and how long did that conversation last?
I have no idea.
And what was discussed during that conversation, please?
The case, the nature of the case.
And what assistance was he requesting of you?
To interview Tim Matouk and another person connected to the family that owned a business in the town.
John Matouk? Bill
No,
Matouk?
it was
Dave-
another Matouk, I'll say that.
Okay. And I see you just pointed to Tim Matouk. Do you recognize Tim Matouk in the room right now?
Of course, we work together.
Okay. How long have you been working together? Or how long have you worked together?
Well, it wasn't a consistent basis. However, some of the major high-profile cases that I've worked or he's worked in the city, in conjunction with his current duties as an investigator with the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office, I've had 2 specific occasions to actually go out in the field and work with him. But we've had constant contact with one another in conjunction with our duties.
Okay. Let me go back to Pazahowski's contact with you. He asked you to interview a couple of people. Is there a reason that he gave you for why he wanted you to interview those people?
Yes, it was connection with allegation made that they were connected to the case, or and see, at this point, I can't tell you if my contact was with him prior to the discovery of the recovery of Ms. Matouk Romain, am I saying it right?
JoAnn Matouk Romain.
JoAnn Matouk, or if it was at the time of her initial disappearance. I don't know. You know, I don't recall that. I just know that I was asked to go to the PD and make an assessment of the case. And it was only an assessment because, like I said, I was assigned to another major public corruption case. So I was asked to assess it off the basis that I had acted in that role and capacity before as a first lieutenant who would normally make an assessment to say what resources are you requesting from the state police? What is it that we can do to help you? So I was asked to go out and make a case assessment. So I made contact with Pazahowski, and when I say that, I don't mean any disrespect. I had other investigations that when I first met Pazahowski, so his rank and stuff changed. So as police officers, we refer to each other by last name. So I don't mean any disrespect and disregarding your title or rank. However, I had on 2 other cases, I had contact with Pazahowski, so I was familiar with him. So I went and I met with him, and I don't remember the conversation. I will not sit here and tell you that I remember a conversation from 6 years ago. It just won't happen.
Okay.
But I can tell you the gist of the conversations
Please.
was to conduct interviews of Tim Matouk and another individual because there was some type of perceived conflict of interest, something to that effect. And I don't know specifically the dialogue that was communicated.
So did you conduct interviews of Tim Matouk and the other person that was mentioned?
No.
And is there a reason for that?
Yes, because in assessment of the case, I asked him what resources did he need. He said the interviews of those individuals, basically to clear them, or with the case or the allegations or something to that effect. And the terminology that clear, I said we don't clear people.
Who used the term clear, you or him?
Pazahowski did.
Pazahowski asked you to clear Tim Matouk and this other person?
Yeah.
Both of them or just one of them? To clear both of them? Or?
Well, to conduct the interviews to clear them, from the allegations or whatever, to interview them to see if they were involved or something to that effect.
So you told him, we don't clear people?
That was the terminology I had a problem with. I said, we don't clear people.
And you said that to Pazahowski?
Yes.
Okay.
Because that's not our role. When you say the term clear, we go out, we might conduct an investigation, we might gather some facts, we put those facts together, we present them to the prosecutor's office. We don't have the authority to clear people, and that's what I communicated to him. We don't do that. So being that those were the resources he was requesting, it wasn't any disrespect, it wasn't anything, and I didn't communicate this to him because of chain of command. The level he had at that time was the high ranking in his department. He made that request to my commander. My commander was responsible for communicating that back to him. So I left the PD.
So you didn't actually tell Pazahowski to his face, we don't clear people?
Well, I did tell him,
you
we
did tell
don't
him
clear
that.
people.
Okay.
I didn't tell him we wouldn't be assisting at this point.
Okay.
I just told him that's not our function. We don't clear people.
So
That's not what we do.
So after you told him that we don't clear people, did he follow up and say, well, okay, don't clear him, just interview him?
No, because it was no other dialogue beyond that. There was no other request for additional resources. So I went to my car and contacted my supervisor, communicated to my supervisor what was said, and my boss said, you're right, that's fine, send me an email telling me what's going on, and I left it there because that was my pay grade.
Did Pazahowski ask you to conduct any polygraphs?
He wouldn't have made that request to me. One, I'm not a polygraph operator, so I wouldn't conduct a polygraph. That's something anybody at any agency could request of the state police. They don't have to go through another detective. You could contact a polygraph operator at the Michigan State Police and say, listen, I have a suspect or somebody who's claiming this, that, and the other. Can you do a polygraph? That's a resource anybody can use. Just like they can go to our lab and say, hey, I'm a police officer. We have some evidence we need processed. They go to the lab. They go directly to the lab. You don't need to go through another MSP person to get that. Those are resources that's available to any law enforcement agency.
If an agency would ask the MSP to do a polygraph, would the MSP share the results with that agency of the polygraph if they do the polygraph?
I'm not a polygrapher. I'm sure they do. I mean, if you request a resource from the state police, am I good? If you request a resource from the state police, whether it's participating in an investigation, whether it's conducting a polygraph, whether it's conducting processing of evidence, you are going to get a police report. You're going to get a number attached to that. You're going to get a complete police report. You're going to get the findings of that request. I mean, what's the use of requesting the resource if you don't get the results?
I want to ask you more about this, but I just want to go back for 1 second. What is the protocol when there is a conflict of interest between an investigating officer and a potential suspect?
You mean with the state police?
No. When an officer at a police agency is conducting an investigation and they discover that there's a potential conflict in somebody that they're supposed to be investigating, and they reach out to you, what is the protocol there?
Object to the form of the question.
Do you understand the question?
I understand it. I'm
Okay,
waiting.
say it,
So you
please.
said the instructions you gave me is when there's an objection, let the attorneys deal with it, and my attorney will tell me that I can answer it. So I was waiting on the
Let's wait for your attorney to tell you.
You have your question now?
Yes.
Do you have your objection now?
No, I want to add to it. Form and foundation. Thank you.
If you can understand the question, go ahead and give your best response.
Well, I understand the question, but the question is broad and ambiguous. And in that, like the gentleman said, I can speak to protocol for the state police. I can't speak to protocol for another agency.
Okay. Would you, as somebody who's investigated public corruption cases for over a decade, dozens of cases, did you find it odd that a police officer was asking you to clear somebody?
The terminology was odd, yes.
What was odd about it?
The term clear, because law enforcement on a whole, you know, and maybe it's just my understanding, I don't know, but law enforcement on a whole, people don't get cleared. In retrospect, people don't get cleared. Even the prosecutor's office don't clear people. You gather your facts, you present it to the prosecutor. The prosecutor will say, there is enough legal standing here to issue a warrant for that person's arrest, or there's not enough there. Nobody says, well, you're cleared, you're free, you didn't do it.
Let me ask you this. Other agencies have asked you for help in the past interviewing witnesses, true?
True.
Have they used the terminology clear, or did they use terminology interview, investigate, language that you found less objectionable?
Usually, when we're asked to interview somebody, we're part of the case. You know, just to come out cold, when I say cold, that means having no knowledge of a case.
Okay.
Just to come out and interview. As a law enforcement investigator myself, you come to me and say, hey, can you interview this person? It doesn't cease, that's not the only function. What has to happen, especially in a homicide or a missing persons, you need to read the file. You need to have some knowledge of it. I can't just go, you tell me this person said this happened, this person said that happened, and I go sit down and him, did you do it? I mean, I have to establish questions. I got to establish a ground for questioning people, you know? And Pastor Howski did. He said, this is the file. You can read it. You can look at it. However, I don't clear people. No matter what I do and look at this file and question somebody, I don't clear people. So I needed to get clarification from my boss as to what are we doing. Knowing that I was asked to assess the case, I was never going to be investigating the case. I was just assessing the case to see what resources MSP could provide to assist them. And I was going to report back to my boss, these are the resources, in review of the file, I feel like blah, 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 blah. You know, it was going to be like that.
Did you seek that clarification from your boss?
No, because I told him the terminology cleared was used. He said, send me an email. I typed the email and sent it to him.
To your boss?
To my boss.
To Darrell Hill?
Yes.
You sent them an email that said what? And this was the email that we talked about before that you said you want to talk about later.
Everything that I
right?
just discussed with you guys, that I met with Pastor Howski, He asked me, I asked him what resources Michigan State could provide. He said he wanted us to conduct two interviews to clear some individuals. I expressed my concerns with the terminology. Now, if the terminology was just a misuse, he could clear that up with my boss. I was reporting back my assessment. So that's what I did. Everything I just discussed with you all was in that email. It was a lengthy email, and I forwarded it to my boss as to my assessment. And then I went on to further my investigation into that chaotic investigation that I was working on.
With the cops who were doing drugs?
Yes.
Drug dealers. Okay. As far as this email goes, which email address did you send that email from?
My email, my work email address.
What email address is that, please?
It's Powell.
Powell.
Yes.
T, like Tom, or like Twana.
At michigan.gov. Gov like Victor.
Powell, T at michigan.gov. And what's the email address that you sent it to, please?
I don't know. Durrell Hill's email address. And
Okay.
it's several Durrells, it's several Hills. I don't know what his specific email was for the state police at that time. He's no longer an employee with the Michigan State Police. He's still employed by the state. He retired as a captain from our department. He is now some ranking official with the state Secretary of State's office.
And this was
investigative section.
And this was an email that you sent him explaining everything that took place, explaining the fact that the term clear was used, that you don't clear people, that you investigate people. And did he send a response of any sort?
He wasn't required to. He didn't.
He didn't.
No, not that I can recall.
Did he talk to you about it?
Well, we discussed it on the phone. When I left the PD, I got in the car and I called him.
And what did you say to him?
You know, I told him exactly what I just said here. You want me to repeat that?
I think we understand.
Okay.
Did-
And I also expressed the frustration that several people had called my phone in conjunction with the investigation. I asked him, I said, did you give out my phone number? Like, are you telling people that this is my case because you didn't assign me? It was some clarification there because people were calling my phone.
Who was calling your phone?
I got a call from Michelle, Romain, and Tim Matouk.
This was back in January of 2010?
Yes.
What phone number is that, please?
I don't know.
It's not the phone number that you still have now?
I got a different phone.
Okay.
I changed job responsibilities and duties and
Okay. Now, are these phone records maintained anywhere at the Michigan State Police? Do you know?
I don't know.
Do you know what the carrier was of your cell phone? This is a cell phone we're talking about, right?
2010, it could have been Nextel, it could have been Verizon.
One or the other.
One or the other.
Nextel or Verizon. And and this was back in January of 2010 when these
I
calls
don't know
came?
what month. I know it was 2010. Like I said, I can't tell you to this day, unless you tell me, I can't tell you to this day what date that meeting took place.
Okay.
I just know that during that investigation that's the only significant thing that occurred around that time that would make me remember anything. There was nothing significant that transpired in my personal life, professional life, that would make me pinpoint the exact date and time that I met with and talked to Pasahowski. There's nothing there. I know it was the year of 2010. I can't tell you the month, date, none of that.
How many times did Tim Matouk call you?
He left when I was meeting with Pasahowski, these phone calls, I got a voice message from Michelle Romain and I got a voice message from Tim Matouk. I didn't know the number, so I didn't answer them. Of course, they went into voicemail. Later on, after my meeting or something, I don't remember all the specifics. Eventually, I retrieved the voice messages and returned the phone calls to them, but not before talking to my boss to, clarify with him, hey, I got these two people that just called my phone. Are you telling people that this is my investigation?
And did he say yes or no?
He said, no, I haven't given your phone number out. Somebody at the PD had to give it out.
To this day, do you know how those two people got your phone number?
Well, I know Michelle Romain told me that she got my number from Pasahowski. I didn't question Tim as to where he got my number from because it was clear to me that it had been given out by Pasahowski. So I didn't question it. When I returned the phone call, I just said, he made mention of something about you. I hear you want to talk to me or something to that effect. I said, if that happens, I'll contact you, but if not, then I won't, but.
When you returned the phone calls, you called back Michelle?
I called back Michelle.
And you also called back Tim?
Yes.
Is that after you talked to Darrell Hill?
Yes.
Did you tell Darrell Hill that they called and that you wanted to return their calls?
No, I didn't. I returned the calls because they called my cell phone.
Okay, so
and I respectfully returned the phone calls to address them, to let them know You know, if I need to talk to you, I'll talk to you. But, you know, I didn't need to talk to him. I wasn't assigned a case.
Okay, please tell me about your conversation. Who did you call back first, if
I
you
don't
recall?
know.
Please tell me about your conversation with Michelle Romain, if you recall it.
Slightly recall, she mentioned that she was the daughter of the victim, you know, and
Was she asking you at that point to investigate the police officers?
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, she alluded to the fact that, or she clearly stated that it was she believed it was, you know, some you know.
Missteps?
Yeah, some missteps or whatever.
By law enforcement?
Yes. And, you know, clearly she was upset and hurt and, you know, all those different emotions and things of that nature.
At that time, did you think there was
Let
any
me just
validity?
object to the form of your questioning of this witness, counselor. In the last 30 seconds, you have interrupted her in the middle of a sentence and fed her certain words. I would like to ask you to respectfully allow this witness to complete a sentence before you blurt out a question. Thank you.
Am I not giving you a fair opportunity to answer my questions?
Yeah,
I am.
sure.
And you have an attorney here?
Yes.
Okay, and he hasn't jumped in, has he?
Can we move on from this subject, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, forgot where I was. Just give me a second, please. Yes. So at that point in time, did you believe that there was any validity to what Michelle's claims were?
I didn't have anything to go by. Michelle was on the phone. I didn't look at no file. I didn't have anything to go by. Those were her words.
Please tell me about your phone call to Matouk.
As I said, I don't remember the specifics like I did remember with Michelle. It was some communication that he understood that I wanted to speak to him or talk to him or something to that effect. And I said that if that time comes, I will let you know. It's just everything was premature. The phone calls to me, everything was premature because, again, I was assessing a case. If I'm assessing a case, I would have no reason to reach out to potential witnesses or anybody because it's a case assessment. And it was clear to me that I wasn't going to be assigned a case. If I was, it was going to be a strong conversation between me and my boss because I was already involved in so many other cases that it was like I couldn't do that.
Did you have an opportunity to review any documents, files, emails prior to coming here today and testifying?
No, I mean, full disclosure is,
Please.
you know, Michelle came to my office again through Scott Lewis in 2013. At that time, that was the most review I had done of any file. Because like I said, I left the PD right after speaking with Pazahowski. I didn't he didn't give me copies of any reports. I didn't review anything in its entirety, you know. I left, so my full review of any documents was what Michelle Romain produced and brought to my office on that day that I met with her and Scott Lewis.
Did Pazahowski request of you to have somebody at the Michigan State Police conduct polygraphs for Bill Matouk and Tim Matouk?
No.
Do you know if he asked anybody else at the Michigan State Police?
I don't know that. And let me stand corrected here. I think during his process of connecting with me, he might have mentioned something about they could get polygraphs or something to that effect. Like I said, it might have came up. I don't want to misrepresent anything. It might have came up about the possibility of somebody completing a polygraph. But yet again, that wasn't part of my assessment. My assessment was what resources you needed from like field detectives to handle this investigation. Polygraphs and stuff like that, that would have later been encompassed if the state police had had involvement in it. However, it wasn't. And I do want to correct myself. He may have mentioned the possibility of putting somebody under a polygraph or something to that effect. That conversation could have taken place. Okay. However, but it wasn't a request that he said, hey, can you set this up or anything? Because I would have told him how to set it up because it didn't need to go through me if that was another resource or only resource he wanted to use.
If there's a conflict, if there's a police agency that's investigating a crime and they believe that there's a potential conflict in their investigation because of one of the alleged suspects, is it appropriate for that agency to ask you simply to interview that one suspect or to take over the entire case or maybe a combination of the two, or maybe neither. Please feel free to explain.
I object to the form and the foundation for the question, plus it's ambiguous when you use the word appropriate. There's no standard or any foundation that supports whatever someone might feel is appropriate that you've identified. Thank
I'll
you.
agree with that objection and calls for an opinion that, based upon what we've heard, this witness never had or made, but go ahead and answer as best you can.
Excuse me. Go with the question again.
Okay. What I asked you is it appropriate if there's a police officer, like in this case, Pazahowski said that there might be a conflict for him investigating Tim Matouk. Would it have been appropriate for him to ask you to interview Tim Matouk, or for you to take over the entire investigation, or neither, or both, or?
Was deemed appropriate would have been something their agency would have made the call on, not my agency, because we don't go in and we don't assess other departments' actions and activities unless I'm doing an investigation on him or his department or something to that effect.
Okay.
To say appropriate or whatever, I can only use appropriate in the terms of what Michigan State Police policies and procedures and practices are.
After that one conversation and meeting that you had with Pazahowski, did you ever speak to him again about this case?
No, not about this case. No.
Did you ever talk to him on the phone about this case?
No.
Did you ever speak to anybody else at the Grosse Pointe Woods or Grosse Pointe Farms departments about JoAnn Matouk, Romain?
No. No.
So the only discussion that you ever had with any of the defendants in this case was that meeting that you had with Pazahowski. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you said that you did indeed actually speak to, I'm sorry, strike that, please. Did you ever tell Pazahowski that you would not, did he ever request your assistance in this investigation?
Objection. Asked and answered. She's already told him what he said. Now you're trying to recharacterize it in a different fashion. She's
why I
already
asked him yes or no
She's already
that way.
told you what interaction she had with him.
Did
So
he-
asked and answered is my objection.
I think she's waiting for you.
I'm waiting on the clarity of the question, because when you guys
Oh, okay.
do all that, you lose me in that.
When you met
honestly.
with Pazahowski, did he ask you for your assistance with this investigation?
And in that, he wanted those interviews conducted.
And did you tell him no?
I didn't tell him no. I said, we don't clear people.
Okay.
I didn't tell him no. That was above my pay grade to tell them that Michigan State Police would not be assisting them. That's not a call that I should have made, nor did I.
You said that subsequent to your meeting with Pazahowski and the voicemail that you received from Tim Matouk, you called back Tim Matouk.
Yes.
Were you at any point supposed to, or asked to interview Tim Matouk by anybody at the Michigan State Police offices where you worked?
No.
Other than that meeting with Pazahowski, did anybody else at any time ask you to interview Tim Matouk?
No.
And you actually, when you got that voicemail from Tim Matouk, you called him back, true?
I eventually called him back. I can't say when I called him back in relation to the voicemail. I can't. I was just, I had to, converse with my boss. I had to like I said, this was in the mix of me speaking to Pazahowski, that these phone calls was coming into my phone. One, I wasn't going to be rude and interrupt them, and two, I didn't recognize the numbers. They weren't familiar to me. So later on, I returned the call after communicating all of this to my boss. I wind up returning the phone calls out of respect for both of them, saying, listen, you know, if it comes to a point where MSP is involved, you'll be contacted. You know, it was putting the cart before the horse because I wasn't investigating anything.
If you, I don't know if you recall this or not, but is that the only conversation that you had with Tim Matouk about this matter? Or did you speak to him subsequent to that?
I mean, in passing, like during his duties and stuff at the prosecutor's office, he would make comments not specified to the case, but he would say things like, this is a hard time, it's inconvenience of my life, you know, things of that nature, but not anything specified to any time, location, any alibis, anything like that. You know, it's just, you know, I mean, we had professional contact and we would talk about things in our life.
Do you recall how long that conversation was with Tim Matouk when you called him back?
It wasn't very long at all because it was a, hey, you know, if I hear you want to talk to me, if I don't get to that spot, I mean, it could have been other commentary. I don't know. It was 6 years ago. I don't want to give rise to remembering a complete conversation, how long it was and all that. I just don't remember.
Did you ever express to Tim Matouk that you wanted to interview him?
No.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to take a look at this document here. It's page 84, lines 1 and 2 of Tim Matouk's deposition. I highlighted just the first 2 lines.
So that's what you want me to look at, just what you
I want you
highlighted?
to just take a look. Well, you could
The
look
whole
at the whole
page?
thing if you want, but
Okay.
that's the question and answer that I...
Can you indicate on the record what page?
Page 84, lines 1 and 2.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I thought I did. And when you're done, please let me have it back. Yeah, you can turn it back. There's another page there. Page
I'm
83.
good.
Okay.
Well, I didn't need to read the rest of it. I only need to read what he said with his contact with me.
Well, all I want to ask you about is,
Okay.
the question, is it true that Ms. Powell did contact you? Answer, no, she never did. Now, again, even after reviewing this, in light of what you recall, are you certain that you actually called back Tim Matouk and made contact with him?
Yes.
Can I get this marked, please? Handing you what's been marked as Exhibit 1. Have you ever seen that sketch before?
This might have been included in the packet
What packet are you referring
that,
to?
I'm trying to finish. This might have been included in the documents that Michelle Romain brought to my office
When would that have been?
in 2013.
And-
And I believe it was around November or December 2013.
And this was a packet you said that she brought to you, if I recall correctly, you said she brought it with Scott Lewis?
It was a binder that
binder.
she brought. Yeah, a binder of documents that she brought to my office with Scott Lewis
Did she leave that binder there with you?
for that day because I told her that what she was requesting had to go through Denise Powell. If you remember, I told you my assignment was public corruption. This did not entail public corruption. This did entail the death of her mom. So I took that binder that same day over to my boss, who was First Lieutenant Denise Powell, and I gave Michelle Romain her information and told her that she needed to converse with her in terms of that.
Denise Powell.
Yes.
Was Daryl Hill was no longer your boss?
He had been promoted.
Oh, well, congratulations to him. Now, for the day that you had this sketch was in the binder?
Yes.
So for the day that you had it, did you look at that picture together with anybody else at your office?
No, I looked at it with Michelle and Scott Lewis.
Did you or anybody else at your office have any opinions as to who that might look like?
Michelle had an opinion.
Well, I know that.
Yeah, okay, but
I'm
no.
asking about people in your office.
No. Nobody else in my office met with her that day or looked at that day.
Okay, so at that point in time, you had an opportunity to review the file that Michelle had put together. True?
Yes.
Has anybody from the Grosse Pointe Woods Police Department tried to contact you within the last year or so?
I've talked to every attorney sitting at this table, I think. You called me.
For the record, you didn't speak to me.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's
I
okay.
apologize.
That's all right.
I have talked to, you have called me.
Correct.
Some other attorneys have called me. Tim have called me. I have talked to, and with great frustration, I have communicated to them what I'm communicating to you now.
So you've told what you're testifying here today, obviously not everything, because I can't imagine the phone calls lasted over an hour and a half, but you pretty much made your opinions clear. You didn't hide anything at that point, did you?
Checked to the foundation, but go ahead and answer as best you can.
I told everybody here what transpired, what I did that day.
Did you tell them about the email that you sent to Daryl Hill?
I believe so.
Did you tell them that Pazahowski asked you to clear somebody?
I may have.
Okay. What about, besides for the lawyers and Tim Matouk, did any of the officers try to contact you?
No,
Let me just state for the record, I have never spoken to this witness.
I apologize.
That's all right.
I talked to several attorneys. I was frustrated because I was telling the same story to like 4 or 5 different people. So I apologize for misrepresenting that. I do. But I have talked to a couple of attorneys.
And this is Mark Pizer. I had a conversation with Ms. Powell. We never got into details. We were just going to set up a time to meet, which never happened.
We were going to set up a time to meet.
Yeah, discuss the case.
Okay.
Were you going to set up a time to discuss
I don't
the
recall
case?
that, but, I got a lot going on. I'm a commander of internal affairs. I'm responsible for all conducting inspections for the entire state, for the sites. I'm responsible for reviewing every report that comes through and making a decision. I got a lot of responsibilities and a lot of stuff, so I do apologize if that was the case. So
Correct me if I'm wrong, but did you refuse my request to meet with you?
I don't know. Did I?
Okay, if you don't recall. you don't.
Yeah, I probably did because I was irritated. I was irritated by the fact that I'm constantly being badgered about a case that I didn't investigate. I had no part in.
And, okay, do you recall telling me the only way I'm going to get anything out of you is with a subpoena at a deposition?
That sounds good. That sounds like me. That sounds just like me. Yep. I would have to say yes.
So this is not your first time dealing with lawyers, I see.
You don't have to answer.
Okay, thank you.
After Michelle met with you, is that the point in time when she met with you and Scott Lewis, when she was asking you to investigate the police officers that investigated her mother's disappearance?
Yeah, in a sense. She was telling me that that's how they came to be at my office. Scott Lewis contacted me. He said he was a private investigator now, because Scott Lewis and I had a professional contact because of he was an investigator for Fox 2. We had some similarities in investigating some homicides that was connected to Kwame. When I say Kwame, the former mayor of the city of Detroit. So Scott Lewis contacted me. I remember I was out of state at some training, and he said, I have a private investigator on this matter with Michelle Romain, and there's some obvious corruption or, misappropriation, whatever term you use. Excuse me, because, I told him, I said, when he first addressed the case, I said that, if that's considered a homicide or whatever the case may be, I'm doing public corruption now. And he said, well, there is a tone of public corruption here. So I set an appointment for him when I got back out of town to sit down with me and Michelle Romain. We sat down. And, she showed me the file and communicated her opinions and, theories and stuff like that. And, that's when I met with her.
Did you at any point formulate any opinions as to whether or not there was any validity to any of Michelle's claims?
Object to the question, excuse me, witness. This witness is not an expert, and I don't think she's been named as an expert, and I think it's inappropriate for you to ask her opinion testimony with respect to any evidence that may or may not have been presented to her.
I'll join.
And everyone?
I'll join as well.
I'll go ahead and join. Go ahead and answer as best you can.
Well, I'll say this. I don't think it's appropriate for me to say that at this point, because in full disclosure, as I disclosed to you, since Michelle came to the state police and asked the state police to relook at it, I've referred her to my boss. My boss rejected her. They had like 2 meetings or something, where it was a rejection. Michelle continued to reach out to me and make contact with me. We formulated an acquaintance. We socialize, we go to coffee, we go to dinner. This is a very important, serious incident in their life. They lost their mom. So, of course, it's something that's constantly talked about. And I feel tainted. I don't feel like it's appropriate for me to render an opinion. That wouldn't be fair to either side, in my opinion. So I would say I don't want to make that assessment, because we've had multiple conversations with her theories, her concerns, her questions, and things like that. At this point, I can't tell you is based off of what I reviewed in the file that she presented to me, or if it's based off of constant communication and conversation about it. I just don't think that's fair.
If I would take you through some of the police reports that were created during this investigation into the disappearance of JoAnn Matouk Romain, would you feel comfortable critiquing any parts of the investigation, or
No.
would you not feel comfortable
No.
doing that?
I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that.
Just saved yourself a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to January 13th, prior to the 2013 meeting that you had with Michelle and Scott Lewis, and by Michelle I mean Michelle Romain, did you have any relationship, acquaintance, or affinity for Michelle Romain or her family?
Not at all. The last I had spoken to Michelle Romain was that date that she contacted me after I left the PD. I had no direct, indirect, no communications, no contact with her at all.
And subsequently, if I understand this correctly, I know you didn't use this word, but the two of you seem to have become friends. Is that a fair assessment?
I would say we've become well acquainted.
Have you become well acquainted with Michelle's sister, Kelly?
Yes.
And with their brother, Michael?
I wouldn't say well acquainted with Michael. I've met him, I've been in his presence, but Michelle and Kelly, we go to coffee, we meet at Starbucks a lot, we drink coffee a lot, we've been to dinner, we've laughed, we've cooked together, we've done different things together. Yeah. Okay. So, full disclosure.
Okay. And none of this started until after 2013, if I understand it correctly?
Yes.
When did this socializing begin, if you recall?
It was months after her contact with MSP. After she met with my boss, she was frustrated and things like that. She continued to call me.
Let me jump in for a second. I'm sorry. I want to go back for a second before we go to the socializing. When she met with your boss, Denise Powell, was she asking your boss for the MSP to conduct an investigation into the police officer's conduct in this case? Is that what the meeting was about?
Objection foundation. I don't know if this witness was present when that happened, so how would she know?
If you know.
I wasn't present, and it was my understanding she was asking him to further the investigation into the actions of her mother's death. That was my understanding.
Okay.
So I don't, unless I'm misinterpreting, because clearly I have.
Now, is that an understanding that you got from Michelle or from talking to your boss?
Talking to both of them.
Okay, fine. So after speaking to your boss and to Michelle, and from whatever it is that they told you, it's your understanding that Michelle was seeking the Michigan State Police's assistance in investigating her mother's disappearance.
Yes.
Okay.
As opposed to death?
As
Is that
opposed
ju-
to, no, as opposed to go and arrest these cops because they're a bunch of corrupt cops.
I'll object to the form of the question.
Do you understand the difference between what I'm asking you?
Clearly.
Okay.
Well, let me, excuse me, witness, if I could continue my objection. Counsel, I thought your theory was the corrupt cops were involved in the murder, so they're the same thing. You said either this or that, but they're the same thing according to your theory.
Your objection is stated for the record.
Can I take a break? I need to go to girls' room.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
I'm just going to ask you to please not, since there is a question pending right now, I'm going to ask you not to discuss it with anybody. Okay?
Fact 1127, now.